I was planning on dressing up all the way, but really, it's summer, it's hot, and I already did that theater. Let's get to talking about this. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was directed by James Mangold and once again stars Harrison Ford in his iconic character as Indiana Jones. It also co-stars Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Mads Mikkelsen. In here, Indy has now aged to the point of 70 years, and it is 1969 America, but he is dragged out of retirement in a set of unlikely circumstances to chase after a artifact that can change the fate of time that links to his past in more ways than one. I didn't film a review for this movie right away because honestly I saw it and I wanted to just think about it. I didn't want to have an initial reaction. I wanted to let it marinate, kind of sleep on it a little bit because, this is Indiana Jones 5. There's going to be a lot said about this movie, and honestly, it's interesting because Indiana Jones 5 is something I didn't think we'd ever see, and it's kind of just an odd thing this thing even exists. But I feel like I've had enough time to think about it, and I have my thoughts. Indiana Jones 5 is a pretty good Indiana Jones movie. I'd say that's about as far as I'm willing to go at the moment. I my opinion could obviously change over time. I liked the movie for a lot of it, but there are other parts I think that just didn't necessarily work for me. There's nothing in this movie that I necessarily hate, but there are some decisions I'm not fond of or that I don't like. The one thing that I really loved was Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Of course, he's fantastic. I love him as this character. He's just fantastic here, and he gets to, I'd say, have more emotional scenery to chomp up on in here, but at the same time that can kind of serve as a negative because he's not as just wisecracky, and this is more of a it's more of an emotional Indiana Jones film. It's way more somber, and this feels more akin to Mangold's other films like Ford v Ferrari. It's kind of got that vibe, I'd say. Now here's the thing, James Mangold does a good job at being the new director for the series, but you can definitely tell this series is lacking that Steven Spielberg feel and ways of being shot and energy and creativeness. But Mangold does a really good job. I think he was probably the best replacement you're possibly going to get, and his direction here is very good. He's solid. He comes to some really interesting sequences, and in particular, the first sequence that's the de-aged Harrison Ford, which, by the way, the de-aging looks really good here. There's a few times it looks shoddy, but for the most part, it looks fantastic. I'd say 95% of the time. And I love that whole sequence. It's just iconic. There's some really fun things in there. It feels like classic Indy. I also think the first two acts of this movie are phenomenal. I will say it's about the later half of the second act into the third act. I feel like they made some decisions that were, because the sex in the second act didn't quite feel right, and it dragged a little. The third act was kind of, but then they make the decision very late in the film that I just think it kind of goes a little too far. I'll put out a spoiler review for this later because there are things I want to get more in depth about. Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, honestly, to be honest, is a horrible human being. Like, she is responsible directly for a lot of people who are innocent dying in this film. And she's very dislikable because of the way she is in the film and how she treats people. And she's not likable at first. She has likable qualities, but they don't always work because you're kind of pissed at her a lot. But she eventually, I'd say, and that kind of feels right. I would say this movie is better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's better than that. It's not that level bad. It might be better than Temple of Doom. I'd have to think about all that. Like I said, I'm still trying to let it marinate with me. And the action here is pretty good. My problem is I don't think it's necessarily as great as the originals. It doesn't actually have that. But of course you have an 80-year-old Harrison Ford, but he kills it for his age. John Williams gives his last score in here. It's absolutely phenomenal. There's some pieces in here that I really liked, especially in the very beginning. And he helps to carry this movie as, him and Harrison are, the last few remaining OGs of the series. Mads Mikkelsen plays our villain, and he's very, very satisfying in here. He does a really good job. He's got that menace in him, and it feels right. He's got that kind of Indiana Jones villain vibe of just, ooh, I'm evil. It works. He doesn't overdo it. He plays just right. His henchman with a gun, this kind of trigger happy, is also kind of cool. I like some of the themes also this movie explores with aging things. It could have been done a little bit better. I think there are a lot of parts of the movie I was 100% happy with, but nevertheless, considering it's what I got, I'll go with it. This movie also, I think, kind of suffers because a lot of the CGI green screen, it doesn't feel very Indiana Jones-ish. Doesn't always work for me, not necessarily. However, I will say that this film has some good humor in it. It kind of brings the vibes of Indiana Jones. This feels like Indiana Jones. I'm still mixed a little bit on a lot of decisions in this movie. I have a lot to think about, like I said. I'll have more to say in the spoiler review because I don't want to get in depth here and ruin anything. But basically, what this comes down to is, I'd say it's not necessarily as satisfying at the end of the film as it initially was towards the beginning. Like, I think if they could have maintained the first 2 acts, maybe it would have worked a lot better. Doesn't necessarily play out that way. I really, though, had a pretty good time with Indiana Jones, and I kind of recommend it. I'd say this is something I'd say go to the theater, but don't rush to go see in the theater. It certainly is entertaining, though, and it was wonderful to see Harrison Ford back for one last time as Indiana Jones. It's satisfying. It's very much what you'd expect from Indiana Jones 5, and for the most part, it delivers. However, it takes a few too many chances that could have been made a little bit smarter. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a 6 out of 10. So, guys, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you all next time.